Hi guys, welcome back to the next episode of Worst YouTubers. Today we're looking at Nerdrotic, so let's get into it. Welcome back to the next episode of Worst YouTubers. We're to the Worst YouTubers. Now before I do, don't forget to subscribe, hit click the notification bell, where's all so good. Today we're going to be talking about Nerdrotic. Now get through the background. So Gary Buechler, born August 18th, 1969, age 53, better known as Nerdrotic. Nerdrotic is a commentator on pop culture, often related to comic books and geek media, and a prominent live streamer. Before starting Nerdrotic, Gary ran a comic book store in San Francisco, California, the United States from 2003-13 called the Comics Outpost. Now, this is what Gary looks like. His icon. So let's quickly just get into his YouTube. Now his YouTube, so his YouTube channel. Now I'm not subscribed to him because I just don't care for him and his content. So his Nerdrotic has 758 subscribers, has 1.3 videos. His most viewed videos were Hollywood is failed, and that's a good thing. Like 4 million subscribers. So he's the one who coined the word MCU. He actually did meth, if any of you don't know. He said he done meth. The reason why I know is that he said it in a tweet. He jokingly said it in a tweet. He actually meant it. So I don't know what went wrong. Now he coined the word MCU. Now I have this video. Who's it from? The Bone Bridger. Let's get into it. It's 11 minutes. Let's get into it.
The MCU, a term that has been used to describe
a normal amount of rage.
But is the MCU real?
The MCU exists.
Critics of the MCU would argue that Marvel has replaced superheroes with female versions that don't need to be replaced.
Yep, we're all kinds of stubborn.
And that the female versions of Phase 4 have begun to vastly outnumber the males.
Master Skywalker, there are too many of them.
By way of replacement characters.
What are we going to do?
I'm the Bone Bridger, and your opinion is always welcome here, especially if it's different from mine. I won't be calling you terrible names, and I truly appreciate you.
Shall we begin?
Supporters of the term MCU would also point out that they've made the male characters like Doctor Strange and Thor completely dumb in an effort to lift up the female characters. They feel like they need to tear down the legacy male characters.
You don't know anything.
Right. But is this true? Would Marvel really do this? Actually destroy the characters that everyone loves, bash Phase 1 and Phase 2 and Phase 3 and move on to Phase 4 while destroying, changing, and degrading every male character so that they can replace them with a better female?
Because I'm better than you?
Are Disney investors really okay with audiences not going to the movie theaters as much and Disney Plus losing so much money? Is that really what they want for Marvel's future?
I'm sorry, is this a joke to you?
Surely they wouldn't have their characters treat men like...
Their mother's still alive?
Yes.
Good. There will be someone left to raise them.
Well, spoiler alert, the MCU is real. Sure, Marvel doesn't call it that, but the name fits thanks to Nerdrotic, the legendary Nerdrotic. But more on him in a minute. And yeah, it's getting really hard to ignore what's happening.
That's what she said.
Because the influence this is having on the writing and the world building and the way that characters are introduced in these movies is getting really, really bad. And again, I use really, really because it's a very bad descriptive word, just like very is, but I'm trying to speak on Marvel's level.
I'm sure you did your best.
And if we're looking simply by the numbers, Phase 4 has introduced around 27 new female characters to 15 from the men. So that's not as staggering as some people would think.
You serious?
And that's important because I don't think that's the real problem with the MCU. I think we're going to talk about the real problem in a second.
Okay, then I want to talk to Kevin.
No one talks to Kevin.
Because that's what Kevin Feige wanted. He wanted the quantity. And in unrelated news, Disney Plus is losing massive money. Things in Phase 4 are looking really bad. Tickets and audiences actually attending theaters for Disney is at an all-time low when Top Gun Maverick's at an all-time high. Multiple executives have been fired. Bob Iger came back in the middle of the night. Immediately fired the next morning the head of content. And about a dozen projects in Phase 5 just got put on hold. Yeah, everything's great at Marvel. And one of the biggest complaints with this MCU thing is a lot of people believe that the female characters are being propped up and given a lot of plot armor where nothing can really happen to them, but a lot of bad stuff happens to the men. I mean, a lot.
I am not a woman who enjoys repeating herself.
Of course, Angela Bassett's character in Wakanda Forever didn't make it. She sacrificed herself, but even she didn't agree with that. And a lot of people thought, well, why is she going out in this way? Now, I'm actually shocked that they took her out at all.
I'm not a monster.
But in my opinion, those aren't even the problems with the MCU. None of this is a problem with the concept. There's only one problem I have with the entire concept of the MCU and how it's being executed.
They'll never know what you sacrificed for them.
Because for some reason, the Marvel writers and executives and Kevin Feige believe that they must degrade, belittle, tear down, and make the male characters, especially the ones from the comic books, the legacy characters, as bad as possible in order to prop up the female characters. And of course, they're not doing this in every instance, but a lot of the characters are being treated this way.
Well done.
Doctor Strange and Thor in their own movies were treated this way, absolutely. And we're going to look at details of why and how that happened. And I believe that's where the real problem is. It's the quality and it's how they're approaching and how they feel like they must pare these down to build these up instead of developing these characters in their own way. And the writing in Phase 4 has been bad across the board story-wise, but the character-wise, I think if they fix the characters, it would fix a lot of the problems. Because I think the problem with most stories in entertainment, movies, and TV shows today is the writing and the fact that these agendas and the real world thoughts of these writers has infiltrated the characters. This is supposed to be entertainment, forms of fun, and in some cases art. But if we're paying our money to see it, we really don't want to hear your Twitter thoughts. And the narrative against the critics of the MCU
Watch the road.
is that they don't like women or female characters that are strong. And that is not true at all. They think that people that use the term MCU don't like female superheroes or characters. And that's not true at all either. In fact, I just want great characters. I don't care if they're aliens. I don't care if they're robots. I don't care if they're animals.
So smart, me.
But I don't want blatant agenda. I don't want Twitter thoughts. I don't want allegory for everything happening in politics in America right now. And I don't want rip-off copies of Iron Man, Captain America, and especially
when people start seeing you as a monster.
They have absolutely destroyed Hulk and She-Hulk, and that's a video I've got coming out in just a few days. And so the real problem with the MCU is this. They're lowering these male characters to prop up the female characters. And they're not bringing the female characters and saying they need to stand on their own. They're making sure to attack the male characters and tear them down to kind of balance the power level. And not only that, they seem to have the agenda and the push that they need to make the female characters more like the male characters in strength because that'll make them likable. All of this they're doing, the belittling, is that designed to make us like the female characters? Because Phase 4 characters are the most hated characters of the whole MCU.
I respect that.
She-Hulk being number one by a mile, by the way. And don't get me wrong, every character doesn't have to be likable. But some of these so-called superheroes or Avengers should at least be decent human beings or whatever they are. Maybe they should have some humility, be a little bit humble, because these Marvel female heroes paint a clear picture that lacks all dignity, respect, humility, and basically any of the traits that made us love the original Avengers. And I'm talking about Black Widow as well. If I refer to anything in Black Widow, I don't count the movie. I'm taking everything in game and before. Her movie doesn't exist in my opinion. The Black Widow movie just doesn't exist. I might be wrong, but aren't the Avenger characters supposed to be like the good guys, the heroes? Not to mention, in this era of Phase 4, we also have some new double standards.
Should we help them?
And sure, double standards have always existed in entertainment, but it seems like the pendulum is just going to keep on swinging back and forth. Imagine the scene in Thor if we switched it and it was Lady Thor and Queen Valkyrie.
Great.
Some might say, good, that's the way it should be because now the pendulum's swinging. So it's payback time. Is that what we're going for in our entertainment now? There's some irony in that because of the movies and shows of the MCU. They're box office failures. For the first time, Marvel was losing money, and they've been covering up how bad Disney Plus was losing money, but they can't cover it up anymore. Disney is a publicly traded company. That means you can buy shares and be a partial owner, and investors want to make money. They don't want their audience to be pushed away. And props to the one and only Nerdrotic, who coined the term MCU, who pushed this, who saw this coming before anyone way back when that scene happened in Endgame. He already was on this and started this, and he is absolutely nailing this, and he's a far better creator than I am, and it would be really cool to be on his streams one day. I'm totally not hoping for that. And as far as female characters in the MCU, there's nothing wrong with having more of them, but have them be their own original characters and don't bring them in and tear down a guy, because that's not going to work and it's not going to come off the way you think it does. And these female characters in Phase 4 are going exactly the way Kevin Feige sees it, because he's in charge and maybe he has too much control.
Smart guy.
And I make no secret on my channel that I believe that Ripley and Eowyn are two of the best characters ever on the cinematic screen. Not best female characters, best characters ever. In fact, Ripley is number one in my book, like above everyone. And where the MCU doesn't understand how those characters excels is they think that these female characters need to be somewhat like the men characters were in the MCU instead of standing on their own. They clearly didn't like how Black Widow was originally portrayed, but her kind of flirty attitude and demeanor was amazing. We all loved it in Marvel. And what was so bad about her character?
Let me go.
Because they completely changed her for the Black Widow movie. But if we had to give an example of MCU, It's She-Hulk. Bruce Banner, who literally helps save the universe and everyone. She treats him like garbage. Hulk is supposed to be pretty unstoppable, and she degrades him, belittles him, tears him down, and has no respect or love for him. He's literally trying to help her. Of course, there's Doctor Strange, who is a shell of a character at this point. They've all but deleted him. And sure, Wanda being the Scarlet Witch is really cool once you get into it, but they didn't even set her up right, because in WandaVision, they were so afraid to make her the villain. They kept trying to justify her as a hero. That was a huge mistake, because she's an absolute villain in that show, and it ruined the whole show that they tried to defend it and justify it. Just have her be the villain. It's okay for her to be the villain. She doesn't have to be likable, remember? Of course, what they did to Reed Richards and Black Bolt in that movie. Thankfully, Captain Carter and Miss Marvel didn't get away with it, but they were allowed to put up a fight. But it's not just about fighting and power levels in the MCU. The idea that Captain Marvel needs to be so strong she can fly through Thanos' ship. Thankfully, Thanos did knock her around at the end. I was really worried for a minute she was just going to end the movie and just take the gauntlet and be like, all right, party's over. And that brings us to the dialogue of this MCU era. And I think the writers have forgotten what it's like to be a human being and write human characters, not just female characters. And I'm serious. I think these Marvel writers have been spending too much time on Twitter, and their way they write on Twitter has come into the characters, and they're talking that way. If you're a writer at Marvel, you shouldn't even have a Twitter account. And She-Hulk broke the fourth wall to tell us this much. And of course, they took Black Widow down as well. One of my all-time favorite characters. And I know I said I don't count the Black Widow movie, but we can't ignore it because it really kicked Phase 4 off in a really bad way. And yes, I know we had shows, but Black Widow movie was an all-time bad portrayal of a great character. And the movie wasn't even necessary. The way they portrayed Taskmaster in that movie was a sign of how bad Phase 4 was going to be and how they were going to treat these characters. Not to mention her family and how they had her interact with her dad. Of course, we can't forget the two new characters we got in Captain Falcon, Winter Soldier, or whatever it was. We got a terrible attempt at calling someone a hero who was an absolute villain. And we got to meet Nick Fury's replacement, who was also a lackluster character, but also you're not going to replace Samuel Jackson with any version of anything. You might as well lean into her being a little bit more evil. And America Chavez made sure to tear Doctor Strange down pretty good. Even though some of it was good, there was a good movie in there, but we didn't get to see that version. And I'm going to miss a lot of characters talking about the MCU, but I'm not going to skip Thor, because in my opinion, this was the character that's been done the worst, torn down the most. They destroyed his character in order to pick up the ones around him, like Queen Valkyrie. I'm not going to say King Valkyrie. And I really liked that character in Thor Ragnarok. I actually enjoyed it, but off screen and now what we got from Thor Love and Thunder, I see that it was a problem. They dumbed Thor down because they thought it was necessary. The Thor we got in the first Infinity War was the best we're ever going to get from Thor. We got Thor Ragnarok, we got Infinity War, and then Endgame, downhill, and this really finished the job. So it's not surprising at all that Chris Hemsworth is probably done playing Thor, because why would he want to come back after what they did to his character? And the strategy of treating their character like this is clearly backfiring. The facts are this: Disney is on the decline, Disney Plus is on the decline, Marvel is in a massive decline. Audiences, Disney Plus, things are not going good. I don't know how people can't at least admit that. Whether you agree that it's the fault of the MCU, it might be just the stories, the CGI, but things are not going well at Marvel. And this is definitely part of the problem. If you just talk to people, that's what they talk about. And I don't think Bob Iger's going to save the day. I think things are going to get worse. And I hate to say it, Marvel Phase 5 is probably the end of Marvel before we get a hard reboot.
So he pretty much coins what the MCU means. Now he probably doesn't wear now. Now he's still doing videos on YouTube channel, on Twitter. He's stupid on Twitter. He's doing stuff like Miles Morales is Miles Morales. Dude, he's Spider-Man, dude. Like, none that you care. And yeah, so final thoughts, I don't give a fuck about. I don't really care about Nerdrotic. He's just annoying. I don't care for him. So yeah, so that's pretty much Nerdrotic. So guys, don't watch my videos for next one. Bye.